this video I want to talk about the interview of the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and the American podcaster Lex Fridman. As a Russian, I want to share my opinion on some things, such as when Zelenskyy said that he has contempt for all Russians because they did not speak out against the war. Or I also want to comment Fridman's statement that Putin loves his country. I will also show you what Russian propaganda said about this interview. Let's begin. I watched this interview on the original track in English, but also Zelenskyy switched to Ukrainian a lot and sometimes to Russian. It was difficult to understand Ukrainian, that's why I read subtitles in English. I think that every language choice has its own purpose. So in English, he managed to address Western audience. By speaking Russian, he showed the Russian people that he's okay with Russian, despite the propaganda of our country, because the Russian propaganda says that, oh, they repress people in Ukraine for speaking Russian. But of course, the majority of his conversation is in Ukrainian. And here I think it's also significant because he demonstrates that Ukraine is actually a sovereign country. It has its own language. So Zelenskyy says, at the beginning of the war, I addressed Russians in Russian. Zero effect. They are mute. They do not listen. Some are afraid. It's like when a person is drowning, people walk by because they can't hear them. They are afraid to save them. This is why I honestly despise these people, as they are deaf. It was painful for me to listen to it, but I understand that when Volodymyr Zelenskyy says this, he doesn't mean it, because he knows Russia really well. He worked in Russia. He understands how Russia works and whether people are able to protest there. I think it was a political speech for Ukrainians. And if we continue this metaphor with Ukraine drowning in the sea and Russians passing by, I would say that Russians, some of them, are those who push Ukraine to drown, but other Russians are drowning themselves but in a swamp, and they cannot do anything. If they scream or move, they go deeper into the swamp, which means they will go to jail or be killed or exiled. The country's population is 140 million, and there are different people. Some of them, a lot of them, participate in the war actively. They fight in the war for money mostly, or for ideas, but I think it's minority. And some people donate to the Russian military, the politicians who participate in this. These all are terrible people, and I despise them as well. But also, as I said many times in my videos, there are pro-democratic, anti-war people who cannot do anything, you know? I've been saying it on my channel for 3 years already. I realized that I was right when I left Russia, and I realized that it is impossible now to change something in Russia if you're just a regular person. Yes, you can say, but if all of you go out and protest as a big crowd, the government will be afraid of you. No, they will put everyone to jail, because Putin's repressive machine is so strong. He has been building it for 25 years. The only group that can weaken Putin and be a threat for him is his inner circle, his elites. But of course, everything that I've said now, I would not address to Ukrainian people who suffer, who die under Russian bombs every day. Understand that they won't even listen to me, probably some of them. My justifications of our inability to protest won't help them. Let's talk about love. Lex Fridman. If you think that the president of a country is completely crazy, it's really hard to come to an agreement with him. You have to look at him as a serious person who loves his country and loves people in the country. And he conducts, destructive military actions. And to this, Zelenskyy answers, who are you talking about now? Who loves his country? And Lex answers, Putin. Do you think he doesn't love his country? And here Zelensky gives brilliant speech, very explanatory of what Russia is. No, what is his country? He happened to consider Ukraine his country. No pity for the Chechens. Do they look Russian? Do they speak Russian? He doesn't love his people. He loves his inner circle. He sends 18-year-old boys to the war, and it's not that he's defending his country from some fascists. No, he's sending them to die. Here I agree with Zelensky, and indeed, if Putin thinks that Ukraine is a part of the Russian world, and Ukrainians are basically Russians, then why he kills them? And Zelensky mentioned Chechnya, reminded us that Russia became that big by conquering other peoples. Well, not only ethnic minorities, people in my region, which is in the very far east, they live very poorly. And Zelensky said, how much more land you need? And living in spas, growing up, seeing the despair around, I always thought why they settled here, why they even came to the Far East. They were smart enough to sell Alaska, but why do you keep this land if you don't develop it? Then Zelensky says that usually when there is a natural disaster, a country's leader visits this region. But let's look at the Kursk region, where currently there are Ukrainian troops, and it is officially the territory of Russia. But did Putin visit this region? No, he doesn't care about these people. And he's correct again, because whenever there is a serious disaster or a terrorist attack in Russia, Putin just disappears and remains silent for several days. This happened in 2024 with Crocus terrorist attack, with the floods in the Ural region, and well, with the floods in my region in 2023 when my house was flooded. And the goal of an autocrat is to stay in power, and he will do this by all possible means. Putin wanted to raise his popularity by this small victorious war when he invaded Ukraine. Don't look for some deep philosophical ideas deepened in Christianity and saving the world dynamics. No, it just as simple as that. Maybe he loves Russia, but only the mythologized version, and he's detached from reality, not knowing how people live. Or actually, I think he does know, but he just doesn't care. He doesn't care. Look at Kursk again. And I felt so odd hearing Lex Fridman saying this. And when I heard this, I just laughed and remembered a meme where someone opens a door to an apartment and he says, "Здесь людей ебут," which means they're fucking people here. Like, no, maybe you googled the pictures of the shiny golden Orthodox churches, but no, they are torturing people in prisons. And now I want to talk about how the Russian propaganda reacted to this interview. There are only state-controlled TV channels, and a lot of media are blocked and exiled. Recently, they blocked YouTube completely, although people still do find ways. Let's read an article from Lenta.ru. The US described Zelensky-Fridman interview in one word. Here they're referring to a tweet of an American political activist, Jack Posobiec. Continuing the article. Unhinged is how he commented on the reports about the results of Zelensky interview. In this interview, the Ukrainian leader used foul language several times, commenting on the action of Western countries, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Volodymyr Zelensky spoke about his contempt for the Russian Federation and entire Russian people. Another source is Smotrym.ru. Zelensky's office justified his foul-mouthed interview. He spoke the language of Ukrainians. Zelensky used obscenities when discussing Russian President Vladimir Putin. At the same time, he stated that he speaks Russian well, but sincerely despises the Russian people, confirming his Russophobia. The switch by Zelensky and Andriy Yermak to public insults indicate that the Russian leader has completely outplayed them. The official Russian... Кто она, блядь? The director of Information and Press Department, Maria Zakharova, called Zelensky's interview a mixture of neo-Nazism and terrorism with drug-induced delirium. Has the Harvard recovered from hangover already? And this is what another propagandist says. His name is Artemy Lebedev. He has a program on VK Video, Russian alternative to YouTube. Lebedev talks about the language choice. I translated his speech. The funny thing is how they communicated, a mixture of Russian, Ukrainian and English. Lex Fridman, our Russian dude who grew up in Moscow, lived in Kiev for a while and now lives in America. He speaks Russian normally, but with an accent. Zelenskyy spoke Russian all his life and only learned Ukrainian in 2017. In addition, Zelenskyy swore in Russian during this interview, and this is an absolutely unacceptable level for a president, even if you played piano with your dick in your youth. But as a president of your country, you must maintain a level of diplomacy. A level of diplomacy. Yes, just several days ago there was another strike on a Ukrainian city where several civilians were killed. Level of diplomacy. And regarding Zelenskyy comedy past, I think it's amazing that he's so talented, that in a democratic system, even after being a comedian, he managed to run for presidency. I once read this quote: Zelenskyy is a clown who became a politician. Putin is a politician who became a clown. Lebedev then gives evidence that Ukraine is actually Russia. The Russification has not yet been completed in Ukraine because Zelenskyy spoke a third of this interview in Russian, which is not true. And there is a lot of Russian heritage left in Ukraine. They demolished monuments to Vysotsky, Catherine the Great and Lenin. They are renaming everything, destroying Russian roots in cultural heritage, destroying Soviet coat of arms. It's funny that he equals the Soviet culture to the contemporary Russian culture. In general, when a Jew, Zelenskyy, tries to speak in the language pretending that he has no relation to Russian, it looks ridiculous. Well, but at the same time, I don't think that Lebedev's videos are popular because in VK they falsificate the amount of views. So even though it seems that there are millions, the likes and comments ratio shows that people are not that interested. And they all are focused on the Russian language so much, but the language doesn't belong only to Russia because it is spoken in other post-Soviet countries. And as Zelenskyy said, Russians speak the language of weapons. We are peaceful people. It's not only Putin's language. Let's not give it to them. We already gave out the white, blue, red flag to the government. It is a good flag, actually, with good pro-European meanings. But, partially the Russian anti-war people now chose another flag, white, blue, white, like without blood. So I was entertained by this interview, astonished by how naive Lex Fridman is, and I also learned more about Zelenskyy. I think he is a great person. I cannot even imagine what he is going through as a leader of a country. It was refreshing to see a human-like politician after looking at Putin for 25 years. And I cannot even imagine what will happen if Lex Fridman manages to go to Russia and interview Putin. Putin will just make a sausage out of him. He will blow his mind with another 3-hour history lecture. Write your opinion in the comments. It's interesting to know what you think about this. I will continue posting my travel vlogs from Europe. Yes, I remember there will be many more videos. Happy New Year, by the way. Have a good day and goodbye. Пока-пока.